Same with the anchovy and the chop mackerel. It is highly fluctuating, but there's no clear trends. And these are the statistics that I've been able to compile. Many of them have been given me to Francis Nuno, who is a fisheries professor in Ghana. But the main issue maybe in Ghana is the post-harvest losses and the post-harvest processing. But I think that will be covered later by my colleague, Professor Roundhill Overall. So all I can say at this stage here is that there is a huge potential for increasing the amount of fish for human consumption by better post-processing methods, because you can see here the fish are dried directly on the soil, on the roads, even, I mean, wherever they can find space for drying the fish. And if it is rainy or bad weather and things like that, we have huge spoilage. There's a lot of pollution also. So the post-processing is really a sector that needs to be vastly improved. So my conclusions at this stage is that all I can say is, according to the available statistics, the catches and abundance indices, they seem to be overall stable. They're fluctuating, but I don't see any clear long-term trends. But at the same time, there's a general fear of overexploitation. I mean, this is what people say, that the stocks are overexploited. But as a fisheries scientist, which is my background, I find it difficult to justify, because we don't see any clear trends in the catches, at least according to the statistics. We don't have trends in the effort development. We don't exactly know how the effort is developing. And most importantly, there's a lack of proper analytical stock assessment. So in my view, the overexploitation narrative is not really validated. It might be that we have an increasing number of fishers and they see that their individual catches are going down for the personal fisher, but that is not the same as overexploitation. Then the total catches have to go down. And as I said, huge post-harvest losses due to poor processing, which is a sector that needs to be vastly improved. And then again, let me underline that the inland fisheries in Ghana is vastly ignored and vastly undervalued. I don't understand why it has not been more focus on that. So this, I guess, is my 5 minutes talk on this. It was very brief, but thank you very much for your attention.
Thanks for your presentation, Jeppe. I enjoyed it. I would like to introduce the second speaker now.
Let me just stop the sharing here. Yeah, sorry.
Thanks, Jeppe. He is a marine ecologist and a senior lecturer at the University of Cape Coast, Ghana. Thanks for joining us, Dr. Noble Asare. Take it away now.
Thank you very much, Christiana. Hello to everyone. My presentation, let me just share the screen. I hope everybody can see. So my 5 minutes is to look at the code management strategies of Ghana in the fishery sector and how fishermen can actively contribute to that. So to begin with, I'll look at just a brief background, which Jeppe has already provided, so I'll be very snappy about it. Look at what code management is about, talk about some historical perspectives, and then look at some 5 key points that fishermen, the regulators can use to get fishermen to contribute proactively to the management of our fishery sector, and then some concluding remarks. So to begin with, our fishery sector actually employs about 10% of our population, which is very significant, whilst contributing about 60% to animal protein in Ghana. At the same time, it is recognized that it provides food security and nutrition for Ghana, and also helps in alleviating poverty.
Sorry, Noble, sorry to interrupt, but your slides are not moving. Is that in purpose?
Okay, well, I'm moving, but I don't know.
Maybe we have the wrong screen. If you have 2 screens, then you have to swap the screen. Now we see the next screen. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, sorry for interrupting you.
Yeah.
All right, then I'll stay in this particular mode. It looks like probably
Yeah.
In the mode is the problem. So we have three subsectors in the fisheries, which JP, you have pointed out, the artisanal, the semi-industrial, and then the industrial. But my focus is on the artisanal because the artisanal actually contribute to about 80% of all our marine catches. And also that is where majority of the employment comes from, not to talk about the value chain. So if we look at co-management, that is where it is hugely needed, the efforts of the regulators to work with the artisanal fishers. So this picture just underscores the artisanal fishery in Ghana, and we are looking at the third largest fish landing harbor in Ghana, which is the Elimina Fish Harbor, and it has over 1,200 artisanal canoes, and that is huge. And therefore, we are more interested in looking at how this part of our fisheries can contribute to the co-management strategies. So what exactly is co-management? According to the FAO and some other publications, it is a partnership arrangement that involves the resource users as well as government and other stakeholders in sharing the power in management of our fishery sector. So when it comes to resources such as our fisheries, it requires a lot of stakeholders to play an active role in its management, and that is what co-management looks like. And in this case, it also is informed by the need to bring innovation, because management traditionally has been a top-down approach. So there has been the need to bring some innovation, and therefore the need for co-management. And it also allows the integration of the local management practices with that of the central governments. So in doing so, co-management allows flexibility such that we can have precautionary and adaptive measures incorporated into the management structure to make sure that the management is effective. So historically, Ghana has been managing its fisheries through a top-down approach, but over a period of time, there has been a shift. And this top-down approach involves very little the resource users. And therefore, when it comes to decision-making, very little is provided by the resource users. And at the end of the day, enforcement becomes very difficult. So what has happened over time is that there has been some gradual move where the government has established some community-based fisheries, especially in the 1990s. And then recently, there's a co-management strategy that has been put in place, which was just about 2 years ago. And as at now, it has been adopted into the marine fisheries management plan. And so it is going to be gazetted. And when that is done, it will become a law, an act, which will then govern how we employ co-management in the fishery sector of Ghana. So how do we get fishermen to actually contribute to this co-management? Of course, the co-manager structure itself means that it should actively look at the resource users themselves, how they can contribute. And this must be a broader stakeholder engagement, which would allow all the key members of the fisheries sector to contribute, particularly the artisanal. So there should be, for example, the use of participatory research by the regulators to get on board all the key fishery groups in Ghana to participate in this approach. And I know that this has already been done to a large extent in the enactment of the co-management policy. There should also be an active way to elicit proposals from the fishermen themselves, because these are the resource users and they know a lot of the traditional ways of going about fishing and some of the practices that will help them. So by eliciting these proposals, we can be able to bring on board in the management plan what the fishermen themselves can work with. And usually, if somebody is actively involved in decision-making, then the expectation is that they will also adhere to the rules and regulations that come with it. There must also be a documentation of traditional indigenous fishing practices. Fishing in Ghana started about 3 centuries ago, and there has been already some traditional methods which the fishing community
Oops, I think we lost Noble.
Yeah, Yes, I think we lost him. So we will give it a minute and see what happens, and then see what next to do.
Can he hear us? Can you hear us? Then
Noble, can you hear us?
write in the chat.
I think he's off.
Okay. So I would introduce the next speaker now. Yeah.
That's really a pity.
Yeah, I will introduce the next speaker now. Thanks, Noble, for your presentation. He is a senior lecturer at the University of Cape Coast, Ghana. Thanks to...
But maybe if he gets back again, we can maybe see the last part of it later.
Yeah, sounds great.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, so I will introduce the next speaker now. He is a senior lecturer at the University of Cape Coast, Ghana. Thanks to Dr. Isaac Otre for gracing the event. The floor is yours now.
All right, so thank you very much, Christina. Let me share my screen and then see. Could you see my screen, please?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay. Well, okay, so I think I also have 5 minutes to talk. My talk is on...
Sorry, I lost the internet.
Oh, no, but sorry, you are back.
What should we do? Continue or?
Since
okay.
I have not started, maybe we can give Noble the chance to finish up.
Yeah, Noble, please continue. Glad to have you back. Yeah.
Are you muted, Noble?
Yeah, Noble, can you unmute? Okay.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. Glad that you've joined us again. So please continue.
All right. So traditionally, we don't involve women in decision-making in the fishery sector. So there should be an active encouragement for the fisheries regulators to include gender balance in the decision-making, because the women also have a lot to offer. And lastly, we should recognize traditional authority in the fisheries co-management strategies, because as I indicated earlier on, traditionally, before even the regulators were established, fisheries were managed by the traditional authorities, and therefore we should recognize their authority in the management, which will be very immense in the process. So to conclude, my concluding remarks looks at three things. First of all, regulators, regulation and policies from co-management strategy will be considered a very good way to legitimize how we go about our fishing, because in Ghana, we haven't been able to implement our fisheries regulations properly because of lack of enforcement. And with co-management, it provides resource users to be able to play a role by seeing the process as more legitimate and less of an imposition on them. And secondly, we would see high compliance once we engage the fishers themselves in the process of enacting these laws. And then finally, there will be some efficient way of managing our fishery stocks, which is actually dwindling. And when I say dwindling, I'm talking about the small pelagics, which these large group of fishers depend on. So in the future, we expect that with these efforts, we will see a lot of improvements in the management of fisheries. Thank you very much.
Thanks for the presentation. Yeah. Yeah. So we would now move on to Dr. Isaac Otre.
All right, so I'm back to my screen. I believe you can all see the screen.
Yes.
Good. So my talk is on how we could move towards having a peaceful coexistence between the local artisanal fishers and the foreign industrial fleets in our maritime waters here in Ghana. And I'm very happy that we have Jojo Solomon and others on this course. So sorry, it looks like my screen is not moving. I may have to stop sharing and reshare again because I shared earlier. No. Okay, and let me reshare again here. Okay, so I think you can see. Is it moving up from your end, please?
Yes.
Okay, good. So, yes, okay. So I think Professor JP gave an overview of Ghana's fisheries. I'm just adding a brief to it. This is Ghana's artisanal fishery, mainly operates on wooden canoes. And the most recent canoe frame survey we had, which was in 2016, pointed to about 13,000 canoes operating from the shores of Ghana. Conservative estimates puts it at around 16,000 now. And it is the largest fleet in the industry in Ghana. Next is the industrial. Sorry, I don't know what is preventing my screen from moving. I guess I may have to close something here before. Sorry, it would look like something is preventing my screen. Let me look at it and okay, this one. Okay, good. So I believe I should be fine now. I'm not sure of what's happening. Maybe this one. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I can see your screen now. And
yes.
Could you try moving it? Could you try moving it?
Next. Hope it's going now, right?
Yes, it's moving now.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so the next is the industrial fleet. This industrial fleets are not Ghana made. As a matter of fact, at the moment, all the industrial trough fleets, these are the industrial trough fleets we have in our waters, are Chinese made, and they are mainly operated as a partnership between Ghanaians and the Chinese. So they are foreign fleets, essentially. Official records indicate that we have 74 of these trawlers in our waters here in Ghana. So I'm not sure of whether it was Prof. Nunu or who fed Professor Jepe with the information, but I see it to be a bit outdated. These are the records I'm giving you now are the most current records we have. Beyond that, we also have the tuna fleet. So if you look beyond, at the background of the picture, the vessels behind are the tuna fleets. We have 27 of these, and these are ICAT regulated. So they fish mostly in our EEZ and at the high seas. So the conceptual framework, or the framework, resource framework I'm showing now is a work we did in 2020, and I would want you to focus on the right side, between the GNCFC, that's the Ghana National Canoe Fishermen Council, and the Ghana Industrial Trawlers Association, GITA. So we just, as part of an assessment of fisheries governance, we just asked the industrial trawlers, what is your relationship, or how cordial is the relationship between you and the artisanal fishers? Or interestingly, all the industrial trawlers said they have very cordial relationship with artisanal fishers. We asked the artisanal fishers, what's your relationship with the industrial trawlers? And interestingly, all the artisanal fishers said that our relationship with the trawlers is not cordial, and a number of reasons were listed, especially from the artisanal side, which you can see at the top. It's not cordial because there's illegal fishing on artisanal fishing grounds, and harvesting small pelagics, and etc. So just an overview of the state of Ghana. Ghana, our artisanal fishery in particular, and especially the Sardina orator, which forms the backbone. In fact, it used to form the backbone of our artisanal fishery. Unfortunately, now it is no more. Professor Yepe presented the graph up to 2002, I think, which I think should be over 2 decades now. But what I'm showing is the most current record from the scientific and technical working group. And Prof. Yepe, I can share the assessment we do from the 2016 report, 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2020. And they are all pointing to the fact that the Sardinella fishery, which forms the backbone of Ghana's artisanal fishery, is now almost collapsed. From an annual harvest of about 120,000 metric tons, now we get just about 20,000 metric tons. So, and effort keeps going up while the catch keeps coming down. Oops, it looks like the slide is not going again. I'm not sure why. Perhaps there is some technology conflict issues. I don't know. Christy, maybe you have some IT experts to help resolve this if possible. I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which part of your presentation have you covered up to?
Okay, so let's go to the next slide. What are the issues? Go to the next issues. Where the slide is showing the laws. So you want to share from your end?
Yeah, please give me a minute on that.
Okay. It looks like the slides move and then they pause. I don't know.
Maybe while we're waiting for the presentation to come up again, we can see if there's any questions from the audience on your presentation, Dr. Okere.
Good.
So if there's any questions from the audience on the presentation so far.
It's not a question, it's just a thank you for updating my lousy figures. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, okay. Christy, is my screen showing? Maybe I can try continuing and then see. Sorry, can I continue?
Yes, please continue.
Okay, all right. Yeah, so the actual issues are this. There is competition on the Ghana's inshore exclusive zone. The snipe I'm showing is the Ghana's Fisheries Act, which defines that the Ghana's inshore exclusive zone shall be 30 meters isobar or 6 nautical miles from the shore, whichever comes earlier. And the law, if you look at the subsection 2 of section 81, it specifies that a person, the 2 and the 3 specifies, the 3 says that a person shall not use a large semi-industrial or industrial fishing vessel for fishing inside the IEZ. So it preserves the IEZ exclusively for the local artisanal fishers. But the artisanal fishers complain that they're always seeing the trawlers within the IEZ, they come close to shore. We have MCCS, which has installed transponders on the vessel, but it has always become an argument between the MCS and the artisanal fishers. The fishers say we saw them close to shore. The MCS says perhaps where they were was not within the IEZ. It's a serious conflict and becomes a tensive debate. Another one, which perhaps many of you may be aware, is the extensive harvesting of small pelagic fish. That is the same as Sardinella we are talking about, that the stocks have collapsed. The industrial vessels are licensed to fish demersals. They are not licensed to fish pelagics, let alone the small pelagics. But the picture you see at the right is a catch from industrial vessels. They supposedly bycatch, which has become a business where they are harvesting the small pelagics extensively and competing with the artisanals. And in coming into the IEZ,
Dr. Isaac Otre, sorry to interrupt. The 5 minutes has elapsed. I would like to ask if you could wrap the presentation up.
All right.
Thank you.
So yeah, so they damage the vessels of the artisanal fishers, and of course, there are also accusation of selective enforcement, and from both sides, and also lack of transparency. So to conclude, we need to step up our monitoring, control, and surveillance to keep the trawlers off our IEZ. And then we sustain prohibition of the transshipment of small pelagics from industrial trawlers to the artisanal fishers. And we enhance transparency and accountability in justice administration. Later, when the questions come, I'll address more on that. But then I think the industrial and the artisanals can also effectively engage through a fisher-to-fisher engagement, looking at compensations for crash deaths through the alternative dispute resolution. And then they examine, people are proposing that we should extend our IEZ. What are the merits and the demerits? And of course, I think they can engage for a common good, win-win situation. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thanks for your presentation. I enjoyed it. I would like to move to the next speaker now. He is the acting president of the Ghana National Canoe Fishermen Council, Mr. Jojo Solomon. Thanks for joining us. The floor is now yours.
Thank you, and good morning to everybody. Yes, my name is Nana Jojo Solomon, the acting president of the Ghana National Canoe Fishermen Council, responsible for the artisanal fishery in the marine sector. Yes, I think I won't belabor some of the points already stressed out by the previous speakers, considering the importance of the small-scale fisheries or the artisanal fishery in Ghana's fisheries. Ghana National Canoe Fishermen Council was formed in 1982, that's 40 years ago, by the then head of state, Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings, and my immediate boss, the national president of the Canoe Fishermen Council, Niabucho Kwanda. They saw the need to establish the Canoe Council because of the size of that constituency and to protect it, considering the fact that it self-employs people over 3 million directly and indirectly along the value chain. And therefore, it is an industry that should be well regulated and well protected. So hence, the Ghana National Canoe Fishermen Council was formed so that it would be an interface between the government, civil society groups, and the fishers, so that this industry will be sustained. Fortunately, for 40 years now, the council has done a yeoman's job. We have always, from the onset of the council, played the role of, private partnership with government. So the PPP project was established with the inception of the Ghana National Canoe Fishermen Council, and we have collaborated and coexisted ever since. Anything to do with fisheries, government engages the council. That is basically the essence of the Ghana National Canoe Fishermen Council. I think a lot have been said. We provide jobs for all those along the value chain, over 3 million people. When it comes to food security, yes, the artisanal fishery is there. When it comes to, did I say job security? When it comes to food security, it's the same. And if care is not taken and it is allowed to go the way it is going, then national security will be a major problem, a major issue, because people without work, especially now that we have oil and gas in our country, then national security should be a matter of concern to everybody. So that is basically the role of Ghana National Canoe Fishermen Council. Our challenges are enormous. Overcapacity is one of them. We are working on it so we can close access to canoe fleets. Now that we have over 15,000 canoes, we believe that the time has come, looking at the biomass, the time has come for us to do something about open access. Again, we're also looking at the industrial fleets. We have challenges with them because they are more, they have technology on board, they're highly computerized, and we cannot, because there's no form of technology on any of the artisanal canoes. And therefore, obviously, we cannot compete with them. And therefore, we're looking at the size of the fleet. We're also calling for the authorities to do something about it. When it comes to also poaching or incursions within the IEZ, obviously, Professor Oche or Dr. Oche has also highlighted on it. Yes, our IEZ is always abused. Enforcement, yes. I think we talked to the Marine Police, we talked to regulators, and their major constraints is logistics. And therefore we should also look at that. And in every society there are recalcitrants, and therefore we cannot say that. Thank God, now we have the co-management policy, now approved by cabinet, and I believe that when we are all involved in co-managing the resource and the people who harvest the resource, I believe that there will be some high level of voluntary compliance, because we are all part of decision making, so on and so forth. And it will also eliminate suspicion, there'll be transparency, and so on and so forth. So I believe that I want to leave the case because most of the issues raised by the previous speakers, has highlighted a lot about the artisanal fishery in Ghana. I will be ready for any further and better particulars. Thank you.
Thanks for your presentation. It was insightful. I would like to move on to the next speaker. And he is a PhD He's a researcher and a PhD candidate at the University of British Columbia, Canada. And he will be giving or providing a special input from the Peruvian fisheries. Thanks for joining us, Mr. Santiago de la Fuente. The floor is now yours.
Hi, thank you. I shoot that 1 second, please. All right. Well, first of all, hello, and let me begin by addressing the elephant in the room. Why are we talking about Peru in an event aimed at strengthening collaboration between stakeholders of Ghana's fishery supply chains? As part of the work we do at UBC, we have developed a very powerful tool that allows us to integrate multiple sources of information. With it, we've been able to reassess the importance of Peruvian small-scale fisheries under multiple thematic lenses. Today, I'm going to go over some of our findings, and perhaps some of what we've learned will be useful to you. After all, Ghana and Peru share many similarities. Our countries have awesome food and music. Our populations are both a little over 30 million. Wealth distribution amongst our peoples share similar patterns. We are both recovering from being European colonies, and we have bountiful oceans and very rich cultural histories tied to them. So Peru is a global fishing superpower. It has the world's largest small pelagic fishery by weight and value, and over 80% of our catch is a single species, anchovy. And this anchovy is caught by industrial purseaners and reduced to produce fish meal and fish oil. In essence, the little fish that is perhaps the most important prey item of the humble current, the nutritional basis of the foundation of Andean civilizations, the richest in terms of nutrients, is reduced and exported to developed nations. There, these products are further transformed into feed for salmon aquaculture or into nutritional supplements for human consumption. Only a small part of the catch is used for direct human consumption. However, less than half of it remains in the country. This is all good business in the sense that these fisheries provide on an annual basis thousands of jobs and billions of dollars to the Peruvian economy. However, 1 in 5 children in Peru is malnourished, and half of them are chronically malnourished. So we wanted to know how important were small pelagic fisheries for Peru, the economy and food security, and perhaps shed some light into how we could increase their contribution to society. So we worked with ecosystem models and coupled them to fishery sector's value chains. In this process, we tried to improve our understanding about how environmental factors, predation, and fisheries shape marine social ecological systems. We use multiple indicators for this, and hence are able to better comprehend and address trade-offs associated with management. For the value chain segment of the model, we follow fish from the ocean all the way to the final consumer. We record all sorts of information from people employed per ton of fish processed to the profit margins of different enterprises. This allows us to provide quantitative indicators about the contribution of specific resources and fisheries to fisheries income, but also nutrition, national employment, and our GDP. This is done using EcoPath with EcoSim. To learn more about it, you can click on that webpage. So what did we find? First and foremost, it turns that small-scale fisheries are the ones that feed our people. Over 80% of the seafood consumed in Peru comes from the supply chains that begin with the small-scale fishing vessel. The rest comes from industrial catches, imports, and aquaculture. However, fish meal and fish oil production removes over 80% of the potential supply of nutrients for human consumption. When we look at how this translates into employment and income, we see that value chains for direct human consumption are the main source of employment and income for the Peruvian fisheries sector. A large amount of these contributions are found in seafood wholesale and retail, components that fish meal and fish oil value chains lack completely. Despite having less than 20% of the catch, small-scale fisheries value chains contribute with 53% of the fisheries sector GDP and 76% of the jobs. Small-scale fisheries are everything but negligible in Peru. And the beauty of this tool is that it also allows us to separate different fleets. For example, not all small-scale fisheries are created equal. Some are much more important than others, not only in terms of their ecological impact, but also for the economy. When we compare, for example, small-scale gill netters with compressed air divers, we see that gill netters have overall smaller contribution to the economy in terms of dollars, but larger multipliers in terms of income. That means that for every dollar made on land, there's more dollars made at, for every dollar made at sea, there's more dollars made on land. Conversely, divers employing a lot less people at sea yet have larger employment multipliers than gill netters. So this will allow us to address different policy outcomes when we are implementing some similar rule that can affect both fisheries. Moreover, the same can be said about target resources. For example, mackerels are a lot more important in terms of nutrition, value, and employment than, say, sharks and rays. So in this process, by understanding the role of small pelagic fisheries within the Peruvian fisheries sector value chain, using multiple thematic lenses and shifting the focus beyond catches and producers, we can get a better picture of the potential impacts of changes in harvest rates, or what could happen if we promoted some types of processing and distribution over others. And these impacts can be described across social and ecological subsystems of Peruvian marine fishery system. This process, or the process of building a value chain and sharing its results, has helped us a lot to shed light into the importance of small-scale fisheries in Peru, and has effectively increased efforts in terms of research, regulation, and enforcement in favor of a more sustainable, economically efficient, and socially just small-scale fisheries and seafood value chains. We are very far from where we want to be, but we have started to move forward. And based on our experience working with fishery systems in Peru, we now know that small-scale fisheries hold the key for alleviating nutritional deficiencies in coastal communities, that working with fisheries and stakeholders across seafood value chains is perhaps the best way to strengthen and sustain local seafood supply and increase fisheries contribution to the local and national economies. And moreover, that participation and transparency lead to legitimacy, and this legitimacy to stronger compliance, and compliance to healthier oceans and better nourished populations. This pathway is much more efficient at promoting stronger fines. Yet it all starts by jointly developing a common language, a better understanding of the system, of the management objectives, and the trade-offs among alternative management actions. I'm positive that many, if not all of these statements are true for Ghana as well, and I hope that our work inspires you to pursue a full characterization of Ghana's seafood supply chain using EWE. For more information about the ideas and data I've used, you can reference those papers. And if you're more interested in the tool and learning about how it's used, you can, at our YouTube channel, there's a comprehensive playlist with multiple lectures and tutorials. Thank you very much for this and your attention, and don't hesitate to contact me if you have further questions.
Thanks for your presentation. I enjoyed it. Max, are there any questions or comments in the chat?
Yes, firstly, thank you to all the speakers of Agenda 1. And secondly, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Max. I'm helping Christiana run this workshop. And I'll be in charge of the chat. So if there are any questions to any of the speakers we heard or we will hear, just type them in the chat. And then at the end of each agenda, we will get back to them and hopefully can answer all these questions. Later in the discussion, you also have the chance to interact with the speakers and ask any questions. So yeah, make use of that if you want to.
Yeah, thanks, Mas, for the introduction. I would like to move on to the next agenda. That's number 2, Ghana Fish Supply Chain, Challenges and New Opportunities. I would like to introduce the next speaker as well. She is a professor at the Department of Geography at the University of Bergen, Norway. Thanks for joining us, Professor Ragnhild Ovra.
Thank you. Let me share my screen. Can you see it, everybody?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I have been asked to talk about small fish in Ghana, techniques to improve the value and minimize quality loss during processing. Yeah, so I will talk about some experience from the SmallFishFood project that we have at the University of Bergen, led by Professor Jeppe Kolding. And yeah, so we see here a fish trader selling small anchovies and sardines, and she is selling it, you know, up in Navrongo at the border to Burkina Faso. So the small pelagics are really very vital for food security and nutrition in Ghana and in all corners of the country. Due to a distribution system that consists of thousands and thousands of traders, almost all of them are women, it really can reach the consumers very far. So 90% of the landed catches are for domestic human consumption, which is great for Ghana's food security, of course. Makes it available and affordable for rural and urban poor. So it's estimated that Ghanaians then consume as much as 28 kilos per capita annually, or perhaps other estimations taking a lot of factors into account say that it could be as high as, between 25 and 35 kilos. We don't really know, of course. This is really vital protein and micronutrient supply. And Mariangela will talk more about that later. But to reach all the corners of Ghana, the fish needs to be processed, of course. And most Ghanaians do not have, or not most, but many do not have fridges and freezers. So the most common form is not to sell or to buy anchovies, as you see here, fresh in the Ashaiman market in Tema, but in a smoked or dried form. And this is of course great. It's lightweight, it can be transported across very long distances, and it has a short shelf life. It can be kept for maybe 6 months or even 12 months if stored and preserved very well. Well, as Jeppe said, there are huge post-harvest losses of small pelagics. Studies have shown by Professor Nuno, for example, that the physical losses are not so high, actually, maybe only 5% along the value chain, but there is a great value loss. So this means that both in terms of incomes for the fish traders, there is a lot loss, and also there are questions then to be raised about the fish safety, because this means this loss of value really means is quality loss. So there is a lot of potential in improving the fish processing technology. In Ghana, most of the fish is smoked, and a lot of projects have been looking into, not a lot, but fish processing projects have mainly looked into fish smoking. And on the left, you see the very commonly used chokor oven, which was introduced through various projects. And it is actually, I would say, a success story in the sense that it finally, this quite efficient way of smoking fish caught on. But we shouldn't forget that it took almost, it took maybe 20, 30 years before, since it was designed by the Food Research Institute in 1972, as early as that, until when I did studies in the early 90s in Ghana, so many fish processors still didn't use it until maybe in the late 1990s, early 2000s. It has really become very common all over the place. So the time factor is very important when we talk about introducing new technologies. So this took a long, long time, where it is now integrated into fish processors' practical knowledge. They have a lot of artisanal pride in the way they handle this technology, etc. However, there are some problems with eating a lot of, both to process and to eat a lot of smoked fish, as Ghanaians do. The smoke is quite harmful for the processors, and also for the consumers. There are high levels of PAH, which I cannot even pronounce. It's polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, which can cause cancer. So we do not really know how much smoked fish contributes to this in Ghana, but it's an issue. There have been attempts to new technological solutions like the FAO Thiaroye oven and the Hotor ovens. The problem with these is that they are very capital intensive, especially the FAO Thiaroye oven. And, you know, it has not been very successful to spread this technology among average processors. It's too expensive for them and it's technologically too complicated. So what about sun drying? That is really a very great way of processing fish. It doesn't require any firewood. The technology is very low cost. And to the extent that in Ghana, very often the technology is almost for free, which is great, but there are environmental hazards. You know, the fish can, on the ground, can become dirty from sand or be in contact with flies, bird droppings, dust, microorganisms, rodents and insects, etc. So there are some problems with that, with contaminants and low quality then of the fish. So there has not been many attempts at doing anything with this in Ghana. In the Small Fish Food project, we have then done some tests. We have developed some new technologies. It's the Food Research Institute with Amy Attor and her team who has been in charge of this. And inspired actually from what you see on the left side here, top is not from Ghana, it's from Lake Victoria. So from our partners in Kenya and Uganda in the project, we were inspired to try out the type of technology that they are using there. And so the Food Research Institute developed some new techniques, as you see, examples of here with racks and some covers of nylon and wire mesh, and they are rather low cost types of equipment. We tested these out in many fishing communities, not many, but 3. And now 4 fishing communities, through training workshops. We also had consultations with the fish trade processes afterwards. And they had some views on the technology, and we made technological adaptations. So what you see at the bottoms is an even simpler version than the one that the project started out with, based on the feedback of the processes themselves. So of course the product dried in this way is of much higher quality. However, we know from previous technological projects that it's not really, it's not easy necessarily to just introduce new technology. And we did, the University of Ghana, in collaboration with the project, have done a survey in some of the communities on the experiences and of the fish processes and their challenges. And so when you want to introduce new type, improved technology, there are many economic, institutional, and socio-cultural challenges. For example, that when fish processors invest in technology, the improved quality cannot really be covered necessarily in the market. The consumers are not aware necessarily of the quality, or they are not willing or able to pay higher prices for the product. So it doesn't make so much sense then to spend money on investing in new technology, even though it's so simple as this one that we have designed. There are quality standards and regulations. If you want to sell the improved product, like in supermarkets or high-end markets, there are many standards regulations that are too cumbersome for the average fish processors to deal with. There are problems when you want to put up permanent structures. That's why we made these actually more mobile, these structures. But access to coastal land for processors is often a problem. This is a gender issue, of course. I think I will just move on a little bit. These are the main important ones. But in terms of yeah, time is flying, you know, so I will move to the conclusions. So what we find is that it's really important to develop new processing technologies in collaboration with the processor. They have a lot of knowledge and experience, and not only in terms of the how to process fish and so on, but also, you know, on their everyday lives and the situation, that all kinds of issues that influence their ability and interest in using new technology. So there must be a bottom-up participatory approach, and not the least, as the choker of an experience shows, maybe things can take a lot of time, and you cannot just have a project and move out. You need to follow the projects up over a long time, maybe decades, you know. I'm not saying that it can take decades, but it can take many years. It's also important that the processors have financial support, and I think this is a really important issue, because we tend to talk about maybe supporting fishermen, but of course it's even more. That's fine, but it's perhaps even more, given, you know, all the competition for these valuable resources that the small pelagic species resources are. That, you know, once they are landed, we really need to take very good care of them and handle them very well, because these are really valuable nutrition resources that we should invest in making into quality project that can make a nutrition contribution. So it's well worth investing more in the post-harvest value chain. Of course, gender equality needs to be included in formal land legislation and customary tenure rights to make it possible to actually have land to process on, to sun-dry fish on. And also, governments should invest in public post-harvest infrastructure that is collectively accessible. It's not really enough to just give that some of the richest fish processors who can afford the new technology have access, but that there are some public facilities that everybody can access. And lastly, improved technology will never be adopted if the investments cannot be recovered. I mean, that makes sense to everybody, not the least to the processes themselves. So there is a lot of potential to link processes to customers, maybe other types of customers than the ones that they normally meet in the average marketplace, like schools, restaurants, hospitals, etc., who can buy in big quantities and are interested in high quality products. There is a need to reduce bureaucracy and to train informal processes, and also to create consumer awareness. Product development is one thing, which we have also done in the SmallFishFood project, which I didn't talk about now, but also integration of fish in the dietary guidelines and health policy. So there is a lot one can do in the post-harvest sector. Yes, thank you.
Thanks for the presentation. It was wonderful. Max, I will leave it to you now.
Yes, so there's a question from Frederick Asante to Dr. Asare. Can you hear me, Asare?
No. Yes.
Okay, so the question is, it is mostly seen that impoverished societies become culprits of wrongdoing, such as the use of illegal methods for fishing or the non-compliance to bans to certain fishing areas. And Frederick was wondering if these cases exist in Ghana, and if so, how can we include these societies to cooperate in participatory management? Dr. Asare.
Thank you very much for the question. As a matter of fact, indeed, it exists here in Ghana. And the problem is actually two-pronged. The first is the case that we've made, that we have dwindling pelagic stocks, and there's overcapacity in the fishery sector, particularly in the artisanal fishery sector. So there is a race to catch the last fish. And in this case, we have lots of fishing communities dotted along the coast who are all trying to get their fair share of the fish. And for that reason, it has resulted in the engagement of certain illegal fishing practices. Now, in terms of compliance, it is a bit difficult to do so because while some communities may comply to stop using illegal fishing methods, the next village will be doing so. And if we are in a race to catch the last fish, then you will compel the other villages to also join in the same fishing practices. If you talk to the communities, you will get the sense that most would want to engage in good fishing practices, but they have to go out at sea, spend a lot of money and time, and if they come home with nothing, then perhaps looking at the next village doing something which will allow them to catch a fish, they will also end up doing so. So how do we change the narratives? And I believe that the co-management policy that has been is being implemented would allow a holistic look at enforcement and also self-compliance so that all the communities would be ready to comply to the policies, the steps that have been put in the policy, so that one village will not be catching the fish using a very bad fishing practice, whereas others are trying to comply. So I believe that is the reason. It's because we have very loose enforcement, and therefore some villages try to comply while others don't comply, and therefore we end up having the problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Asari. Frederick, I hope that answered the question. If so, then we can, oh, there's some more from Frederick here. Regarding inland fisheries in Ghana, do we not think that most of the activities are done on subsistence-based? That is why we have low record in production. I think this is still for you, Dr. Asari.
Hello, I think that is for Professor Yepe. Yeah.
Yes, I'm not sure if Yepe is here anymore. He had to leave.
Okay, but anybody can answer because he recorded. He says that he doesn't really know why in the inland fisheries there is a low production as he recorded, and he thought that there is really some kind of high. There's high as it is in the marine fisheries, but I think that probably there is more activities done on subsistence base, so the fishery inspectors do not really get that to record, and that is why there is a low record in the production that he indicated. I don't know if Dr. Sari, Dr. Trey, and anybody can answer to that. Yeah.
I could maybe say one word about it.
Okay.
I mean, we don't know how, I suppose a lot of the inland fish is simply not being recorded. It's as you say, because it's subsistence, but if in our surveys in fish markets, we find a lot of inland fish. So it's not only for subsistence. So I think at least part of the story is that there has been a much less of a focus on recording inland fish catches than marine catches.
Thank you, Ragnhild. I think that is also what Jeppe mentioned, is the lack of understanding of the inland fisheries and the lack of valuation for that. Yeah, thank you very much.
Just to add a little bit to that, I think the problem cut across, except that it is more pronounced in the inland fisheries. So even in the marine sector, it is largely undervalued. If you consider some of the work we've done and compare it to the records that exist, you can see that I think in terms of the estimates, sometimes we get it wrong. And so when you get to the inland fisheries, the picture becomes a little more significant because it contributes smaller percentage to our overall fisheries catch. So its contribution tends to be diminished far more than we see in the marine sector. But the problem cuts across. The capacity to do the proper, take the proper records for fisheries management is what is lacking. And I think the Fisheries Commission itself has identified that as an issue and is working to build its capacity to gather a lot more data in terms of our fisheries catch.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you to Frederick Asante and to Dr. Asare as well. I must say, I like the direction of the event now. I like that it's more engaging. So I would like to encourage all participants to keep on coming in with different questions as well. Thank you. I would now move swiftly to the third agenda. And with that, we have it as utilization of small fish. So I would like to introduce the speaker. She is the first speaker. She is a nutritionist and a senior research scientist at the Institute of Marine Research, Bergen, Norway. Dr. Marianne Shelvold, thanks for joining us. The floor is yours now.
Thank you, Christiana. Can you see the slides now?
Yes, I can see them.
And even in the correct mode?
Yeah, it's, please put it on slideshow, yeah.
It's not on slideshow, no?
No. Yeah, it's on slideshow now, yeah.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me to this interesting seminar. I have already learned a lot and also got some new articles to read from the previous presenters.
I'm very glad.
I will say something about the nutritional value of fish and why it's maybe not that integrated in policies. And here you can see two pictures. One is of supplements, and these supplements usually provide maybe only one nutrient. And then you have a picture of various seafood, which you can see contain several of the micronutrients that you otherwise would get maybe through supplements. And why is it like that? So for fish, it has mainly been regarded a protein source, maybe energy source, and not valued for the micronutrient content. And one reason for this could be that most of the data we have on nutrient content in fish is of fish fillet, of fish species that are commercially important for global north. So we don't have that much data on fish species that is relevant for global south and not for whole fish samples and processed fish samples. So to fill these knowledge gaps, I am involved in two projects. One is the SmallFishFood project that already have been mentioned by both Jeppe and Ragnhild. And here on the right side hand, you can see a picture of Ghana. And we have sampled processed fish for different fish markets around Ghana. On the left-hand side, you can see a map of Africa and Asia. And this is where we sample fish as part of the IYAFA Nansen program. So we have a research vessel that is cruising along the coast, and we are sampling and analyzing raw sample of fish. And here we also have samples from Ghana. And these data, they are presently not published, but both Richard, that is going to present after me, and you, Christiana, leading this, are working on this data, and we hope they soon will be available online. So in the meantime, I will show some research from the IYAFA Nansen cruise in Sri Lanka, but the preliminary results from your work show that this is also the case for Ghana. So on the left-hand side, you can see the nutrient content of some of the range of small fish. And with small fish, I mean fish that are eaten whole. And on the right side hand, you can see fillet samples. And the general message from this slide is that the small fish eaten whole, they are much more nutrient dense when it comes to critical nutrients, micronutrients, than fillet samples. When it comes to the market study we performed in Ghana, in the fish markets, we sampled smoked and sun-dried whole fish. And as you can see, or it may be not so easily to see on this slide, but what I can conclude is that due to the low water content, when the fish is dried or smoked, it gets more nutrient dense, but also something else happens. So when it comes to vitamin A, we can see a reduced content. And this is when we compare to the raw samples that we have from Fridtjof Nansen, which where you can see that these species are rich in vitamin A when analyzed as whole fish. So this means that it has to be consumed as whole fish because you find vitamin A in the viscera, in the eyes, in the part of the fish that is not the fillet. But something happens during processing and we cannot find the same values of these vitamins in the processed fish. So in conclusion, fish eaten whole has high micronutrient content, higher micronutrient content than fish fillet. Both marine and freshwater species eaten whole are rich in micronutrients. Processing may reduce content on some micronutrients like vitamin A, and we need more data on different steps along the value chain to find out why this is happening and if there are something that we could do to reduce this reduction in nutrients. Thank you.
Thanks for your presentation. It was insightful. I would move to the next speaker now. He is a nutritionist and CEO at NutriScience Global, a PhD candidate at the University of Ghana. Thanks for joining us, Mr. Richard Anson.
Thank you very much, Christiana. It's an honor to be here. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you very much. I hope it's an honor to be here to share my views on the topic given. So I'm going to talk about the inclusion of small pelagic fishes in Ghanaian households diet to address food security. And I'll move straight because most of the speakers have actually deliberated on it, so I'll just move straight to it. So I'll talk about how to include or how to promote fish inclusion in our Ghanaian diet. The first thing that we need to do is, do you see my screen?
Yeah, your slides are not, okay, they just moved.
Okay, so, okay, so the first thing that we need to do is to engage in nutrition education that is involving both the chiefs and opinion leaders. It's also important that we also include the elected leaders, household heads, and then caregivers when it comes to nutrition education. And usually nutrition education can be done using brochures or books, or sometimes we can use, it can even be done using drama, just the normal guns and things that we do to explain to people what is actually happening. Nutrition education has to be done by a well-trained nutritionist who is also very familiar with their local diet. And it's very important that we do this in order for people to understand what we are communicating. The next thing I'll talk about is demonstration. We also need to demonstrate alternative methods that retain nutrient composition and also maintain the organoleptic qualities, and that is also climate friendly. In our field research, we realized that a lot of the women, as has been said previously by some of the presenters, said smoking. So you could see that smoking is one of the predominant ways of cooking food or preparing food or processing food. And now we should also be thinking about this process. Is it going to retain the nutrients? Is it going to? So these are some of the things that we also talk to people about. We want them to understand how cooking methods can also help retain the nutrients, especially for children under 5. So for instance, in some of the field work that I've done, I realized that some of the women would blend the small pelagic fishes, and once they are feeding, they mix it with the oatmeal and can be given to the child to improve the child's nutritional status. And that is one of the ways that we can do to also be promoted. So once mothers know that if I give this food to the child, it's going to improve health, the mother will do it, and it's going to help the community at large. Another way is also to promote the indigenous foods in our school curriculum, and we need to improve promote what we have so that children would also sustain their interest. We need to sustain their interest when it comes to our children and what they are supposed to eat. And pelagic fishes we knowing they are available, they are accessible, they are affordable, should also be promoted in our school curriculum so that children become familiar with it. And in becoming familiar with it, it's also essential that they also consume it. So in our food, ongoing food school feeding programs, we can also include the consumption of small pelagic fishes so that children will become familiar with it. So it's not that they are just being taught in class, but they are also consuming it. And once they know the importance of it, that's one thing about children. Once they know how important or how nutritious this food is from their class and they are eating, it gives them the ability to to express themselves more. And even when they go home, they will tell their parents the good news, and that's a way of promoting and spreading the good news. Last is also for the government and other agencies to ensure that small pelagic fishes are available, affordable throughout through the year, and especially during the lean season. During the lean season, so the cost of these fishes will go up. So if there are ways that we can improve, some of it is if we have a buffer stock, government can also involve themselves in the purchase of these fishes, so that during the lean season, they can also help mitigate some of these problems. In conclusion, I would say that promoting fish will require a multi-sectoral approach. We need everyone to come on board, and we also need the government to spearhead it so that it would help promote food and nutrition security, so that it will also contribute to reducing addressing SDG 2 and SDG 3. Thank you very much.
Thanks for the wonderful presentation. My colleague Jessica will take over now with the dialogue. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm a PhD student here at the University of Bergen, and I'll be posing some questions to the speakers and also summing up the discussions that we've had. So we have a bit of time for discussion. We have about 30 minutes, which is nice. I think we're going to have some good conversations here. But I have some questions specific to some presenters and also some general questions to all presenters. And of course, we ask the audience to, if you have any questions yourselves, please put them in the chat and we'll get to them if we can. So I'll go by agenda. The first agenda, the speakers from the first agenda that we had. To Dr. Ansari, your question is, do the key stakeholders in the Ghanaian fishery sector have the willpower to implement the co-management policies that you described?
All right, thank you very much. I think the process to change the narrative has begun, but if you look at recent history, the issue has been that going through the government structures to get the laws of the land implemented in the fisheries has been a challenge. And partly because the laws are made without the involvement of the stakeholders themselves in terms of the resource users. And so with the engagement of the resource users now in enacting a co-management policy, we are expecting that the narrative will change. So the willpower may not necessarily be there now, but we are expecting that it will improve. And the reason being that, as in the earlier question that was posed, the reason being that once you have a sector that is made up of many players, and some section of the sector complies and others don't, then naturally you expect that the willpower will not be adequate to go through the compliance. So what we are expecting is that now that there's co-management coming on board, the willpower to comply, because these regulations were put together with the resource users themselves. So it's expected that if you have come up with an idea of how to manage your fisheries, then we are expecting you to comply in terms of its management. So we are going to see hopefully see some change in the narratives. Thank you.
Thank you. That's very interesting. I think it really speaks to the challenge of having to include a vast variety of stakeholders in decision-making processes in order to increase the credibility and trust that these individuals would have in the institutions that manage the fisheries. I have another question for all of the speakers for Agenda 1, but also to other speakers in the agendas if you have something to say. But it's about the main challenges currently faced by the small-scale fishery sector. So we had some of those main challenges presented to us. But if you were to reflect on the main ones, where do you think research and funding, for example, should be targeted in order to try and address some of these challenges? Is there anybody who'd like to go first in answering that question?
Well, I can just briefly answer a part of it. I believe that research is fundamental, and we have been trying to get there with the support of donor agencies. The first step in resolving any problem is to get a true picture of the problem itself. And as we speak, when it comes to fish stock assessment, we are not doing very well, except in cases where international bodies like the Fridge of Nansen comes in to support in our data collection. And I believe as a nation, we are at a point where we should be able to collect quality data to inform the decision-making in terms of stock assessment to do the proper work. We know how to go about it. We have the personnel, we have the human resource, except the technical aspect that must come on board in terms of resources, in terms like fisheries vessels that we use that. So data collection is important in the management of any resource, not let alone an important resource like our fishery. So that should be the first step, that we should improve our data collection practices. And that would be a step in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so sort of capacity building and training to sort of improve these challenges, I think, is a key part of what you're saying. Anybody else who would like to contribute some thoughts to this question on where research and funding could be targeted to improve fisheries management? Small-scale fisheries management. Yes, Santiago, please.
Yeah, hi. It seems that there's something that I've also experienced in other countries of the global south, which is the invisibility of women. And the first step into making processing more reliable, sustainable, equitable, just is actually start to document the contributions that these women have to their families, not just in terms of nutrition, but also economically. And I guarantee that these are non-negligible, but they're hardly ever considered. So when we're dealing with policy, women are not in the table, and their ideas, their worries, their concerns. One of the things that Dr. Ranhild mentioned was the lack of public land used for leasing, for processing. We've experienced the same thing in Ecuador, Peru, and Chile, and in many other countries in South America, where landowners will rather lease to men than to women, or prioritize issues or prioritize leases for other activities if it's a man behind the helm. In my country, which is Peru, one thing that actually worked was when the fisheries sector started working more closely with the government bodies in charge of gathering national statistics about like census data. So when they started working together, we got sex segregated data for pretty much the whole fisheries and the post-harvest strategies as well, the post-harvest too. And that really opened a lot of doors. And it's been mentioned many times, we need to make this process a participative process. And for that, it is going to take a lot of money and a lot of time. But overall, I guarantee that that will be a lot cheaper than getting higher investments in enforcement or changing the law to get like stronger fines or whatnot.
Thank you. Dr. Okiere, do you have a comment?
Yes, so just to also add to what Noble said, aside the data on our stocks that we actually need extensive research to explore, it is being argued that yes, there's stocks of the small pelagics are declining. But is all this fully due to overexploitation, or there are other non-anthropogenic factors such as climate change? You know, climate change is causing a mass drive of change in the ocean. How much do we understand how it is impacting on our stocks? So this is an area where we actually need resources and funding to explore what is the percentage of overexploitation causing the decline in the stocks, and what is the percentage of climate change also causing this. So it's important we look at that. Other areas may be, so as stocks continue to decline, can we also explore the possibilities of mariculture by starting to look at the species we have? How easy is it to breed them? How would they survive in our waters and agriculture? So it is also an area where the discussion is driving towards. Okay, so thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Before we move to the next questions for the other agendas, I have one question for Mr. Solomon. It's a very specific, very technical question, so I'd be interested to hear the answer to this. But how do we resolve the issue of transshipment of fish at sea from industrial trawlers to local canoes? Mr. Solomon, do you have any thoughts?
Yes, thank you very much. Before I even answer that question, like we're saying, the small-scale fishery, the artisanal fishery, is confronted with very serious issues that need to be addressed locally and internationally. Why am I saying this? Like Professor Dr. Ochi just said, there's a steady decline of small pelagics, which is the mainstay of the small-scale fishers or the artisanal fishers in Ghana. And yes, the factors are mainly due to, one is due to the fact that there's this serious climatic change that we need to actually delve into and then see the extent of damage it is doing. However, we have these industrial trawl fleets that are also, committing a lot of incursions within the 30-meter IEZ, destroying the ecology, the habitat of the fish where they spawn and everything. It is a big threat. Oil and gas is another big threat to small-scale fisheries in Ghana. We're also being marginalized at sea because of oil and gas. Now, even with the fear of the incoming blue economy, we actually are a bit skeptical when it comes to the fate of artisanal fishery in that light. We are also marginalized on land, because whenever there's oil and gas, there's serious development, and land tenure rights also become issues for the fishers. Again, like we said, enforcement has also been weak due to so many reasons that the enforcers are saying that they are under-resourced. They can't meet the mandate that is also given to them. Now, with the issue of the cycle, it has also become a very big problem. For so many years, artisanal fishers and industrial fishers are always at loggerheads, because the landings, like we have already heard, that no industrial fleet or vessel has been licensed to do mid-water or surface or do pelagic fishing. They are supposed to land demersals. However, openly, they are landing the people's catch. And it has also become a problem. Now, our current minister is, should I say, the only minister who has had the guts and the political will to stop the transshipment. But it's just one part of the success story. Now it is being repackaged and landed as catch by the industrial trawlers in Tema. And apart from that, massive dumping in our waters, and we believe from our scientists that that is also having a direct impact or toll on the small-scale fishery, because wherever there's dead fish, the fish there migrate, and it's also becoming a problem that we need to look at. Unfortunately, our lawmakers put straitjacket do's and don'ts, and if you look at our fishery, it is a bit unique and dynamic. You don't say don't do this, and now, like the case of the pool and line tuna fishery, it is dying because they need lights to catch anchovies as their bait. But because there's a straitjacket no on live fishing, that industry is dying. And I believe that if so many years we've been grappling with this cycle menace, I personally believe that if it is fish that is edible, then what we need to do, or the government needs to do, is to designate maybe 2 ports where these things are done, and then put the required personnel on the ground, like the Marine Police, the Navy, the police, the fisheries, GRA, immigration, customs, just to ensure that the fears of government is, because I can also see government seeing that, because we have history where drugs are being peddled because of this kind of transshipment. We know arms, money laundering, child trafficking, and all manner of things. Yes, I can see the concerns of government. But government is also losing so much revenue, and there's so much dumping in our sea, which is also having adverse effect on that, because for fear of prosecution if they land that kind of fish in. So I believe that if we have the requisite personnel on the ground to check all these things, juveniles and small pelagics will not be landed, and government will earn a revenue, and this coexistence thing can be seen. I think it's about time we re-looked at the whole scenario, you understand, and then get the right things done. We cannot be fighting all the time. So I believe that
Thank you.
Yes, it should be re-looked at again. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your response. Sorry for interrupting, but I wanted to get to Mr. Asante, who had his hand raised before we go to the next agenda questions. Mr. Asante, did you have a comment?
Hello?
Yes.
Okay, actually, I'll send to. Okay, so mine is not a question, but just a short follow-up to some of the suggestions raised by the presenters or the guest speakers. Okay, so I think thankfully we have this issue of the participatory management and the inclusion of small pelagics in our fishery industry, in our diet. I think that when it comes to the management, management is a broader thing and it covers a whole lot of things. So I think when it comes to the management where we include the resource users, sometimes we get their ideas, their grievances, as in what they need, what is really stopping them from some of the activities they indulge in and other stuff. So most of them may be raising a lot of issues. We need this, we need that, we need that. NGOs and the government go in to help them with this. But the problem is there is a lack of maintenance culture or following up to see whether the thing we did for them is really in section or progressing. I think for us to really improve the management, whatever thing we input, we have to do a follow-up, do a maintenance, whether that thing is really put in a good place. I think that is something we can also do to improve the management of the fishery. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Okiere, do you have a comment or response?
Yes, okay, so mine is not the response, perhaps. First, it's a commendation and also a question to Overa, right? Overa, so I think I was so impressed to see the work you are doing inland, right, in Ghana. Yes, and also thanks for bringing to my attention what we have always not really considered, the time it takes for technology adoption. So the chocolate took a long time, and now the smoker is quite young, right? Came not long ago, and there's that drive for fishers to adopt. I don't know. Can there be some modalities in place? Because I know the costs, how much it costs to establish one smoker, and some NGOs have come out with modalities where they pre-finance the installation of the Ahonto smoker for the fish processor. The fish processor pays a percentage, I think just about 15 or 20% of the cost, and then the NGO pre-finances the rest, and then they install the Ahonto oven, and then the processor then uses it and pays the rest over time. But then even that, it seems not to be going so well. It seems not to be going so well. So how do we really get the fish processors to get the Ahonto smoker? Can we perhaps look at making the government incorporate it as part of its annual budget to dedicate a percentage of the budget to doing this for fishers, and perhaps over a period of a decade, we are going to have the masses of fish processors have the oven. Is that a laudable idea? I mean, I'm just thinking about it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's a good question, and I must stress that I have not myself done a study on the Ahonto oven, but there are more and more studies being done on the project that has tried to disseminate this technology to, to become generally, to be generally used, and not only by some very few demonstration projects. And yeah, to my knowledge, that project that you mentioned, where there was some financing involved, has ceased. Now it's over. So I'm not sure how much it is followed up. But I mean, I think to those who don't know, the point about the Ahonto oven compared with the choker smoker is that using the Ahonto oven, you can smoke fish and with very low pH levels. That's the point about it, and it uses less firewood, etc., and produces less smoke. So there are many advantages, but those studies of the Ahonto oven have shown that that processors often are hesitant to invest money in it, even though they get some support. And I would suppose one reason is that very often, after a while, there are some parts of it that is not working anymore, or there are some parts that they never got. you know, so it's typically these technologically a bit too complicated technology. And I know that Amy Atter, who is here, I can see from the Food Research Institute, I think maybe she was inspired a little bit by how we were thinking in the small fish project about the fish sun drying technology, because in the beginning, the first equipment that was designed there was like a cement platform that was very expensive to construct, and it was a very permanent structure that was a bit controversial to put up, you know, on land, where should it be placed and so on. And it was simply not very practical, even though it could actually dry fish very nicely. Then we found out that this is too, the technology is too complicated. So the first version of the fish drying racks was designed. Even that was a bit too expensive and complicated. So the fish traders, based on their, we made an even simpler version. And who knows, maybe we'll find even more and more simple versions or more adapted to the needs versions. So I think perhaps for a hot water oven, something similar could be happening, you know, that the technology could be made much simpler, maybe more, even more cheap. And over time, with follow-up, using building on fish smokers associations, and also traditional institutions like Susu savings groups, you know, maybe not only you know, credit schemes, but building on traditional institutions like that. With time, perhaps, you know, and smoking technology that does produce less PHH can be widely disseminated. But I think it can take time, and I think the technology needs to be much more adapted to the fish processors' needs and pockets.
Thank you for that nice segue to the Agenda 2 topic. I'd like to get to Agenda 3 before we have to close today. And I have a question for Marianne. So what makes small fish superior to other dietary supplements or fortification programs?
Yeah, thank you. I think that some of it has been mentioned already, that it is available, and it's also one of the main things with small fish is that you can buy it in small quantities. If you buy a large fish or a fillet, then it will be more expensive, and you have maybe need to buy the whole part of it. While with a small fish, you can buy small quantities, and it's also a bit more flexible because it's sun-dried or smoked. You can also, it's dry, so it can be stored for a while, and you can also grind it. So you don't need to eat it whole. You can grind it and make it as a powder, and then you can fortify, for instance, the children's food, and the bones will be like a powder and safe to eat. And also, as it's really nutrient dense, especially when it's dried, you will get a lot of the nutrients in one portion. So when you compare to supplements, maybe you will get only one nutrient, and also the overall diet might not be high quality, because you use these supplements just to add on already low valued diet kind of. But if you eat fish, then this will do something with the whole diet. So you will have these two benefits, that it's reduce other foods that might have less nutrients or be less nutrient dense.
Thank you. The last question that I'd like to pose to the speakers is for Mr. Ansong. So is the understanding of the ethnography of a community a key proponent to food and nutritional security?
Thank you very much. It's very true. If you don't understand the ethnography of the people, you don't understand their culture, you don't understand what makes them tick, what is going to happen is that you may bring in an intervention and it will not work. So for instance, if as Overa mentioned, if the Ahoto oven is given to the women or the processors and they find it to be expensive, although it's good, they may not use it. So in every intervention, you need to understand the ethnography of the people. You need to understand their lifestyle. So usually with nutrition education, what we even do is to actually go into the community, speak to one person who maybe is a community leader or an elected person or even the chief, to understand what is going on. So that in case you are bringing in an intervention, for instance, if they don't eat fish head and your intervention is going to include fish head, I think you'll be driven away from the community. So the best is to understand what they want, what they like, and then when you have those information and even how you even approach matters. Some are very they believe that the men should be in charge of everything. So once you start involving women, you realize that some of the women will not want to be part of it. So you always need to understand, like what Santiago said, you want to involve women, but you should also understand their culture. So once you understand the culture of how they deal with their women and how they deal with it, it's going to help you incorporate women into your decision making. Because in our community, when a man speaks, a woman doesn't speak, and that is not good, but that is their culture. And if you don't understand some of these things, you may write a litany of notes, teasers, but it wouldn't work because they don't understand. And the women themselves, they are also cool with it, they are good with it. So if you don't understand the ethnography, it's going to affect a lot of things. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I see we have time for one last comment from Amy Atter, and then we need to close the session. So Amy.
To add on to what Brandon said concerning the ovens. So we at Food Research Institute, in collaboration with the Fisheries Commission, the Food and Drugs Authority, Ghana Standards Authority, and all the other stakeholders, together with the fish processors, have evaluated the efficiency of Ahoto, which was given to the women under a project. But then we realized that most of them are not using it. Some have abandoned it due to certain challenges they have. So what we are doing is that together with the stakeholders, we have interviewed these processes. We've come to find out what the issues are, and we are currently trying to resolve it. And this is being done at the Food Research Institute. So we have improved versions currently, which will be tested, and based on the findings or the outcome from the research, we will then propagate the new version or the improved version for these women. And in addition to that, there's also another intervention we are looking at, whereby with the improved versions that we'll come up with, we'll try to give it to these women on pilot basis and then see how we can help them to acquire the improved ovens. Because then the whole idea was to have a Ahoto that will produce low pH. But in actual sense, we are having results that are showing that they are high pH level, because some of them have actually removed the fat collector. Because then there's a fat collector that will help reduce the levels of the pH. So I just want to assure the one who asked the question, I've forgotten, from University of Cape Coast, that something is being done together with all stakeholders. And it is the same idea we used in the small fish project, coming up with these dryers. Because like Randall said, initially at the research level, we came up with our own idea. We did it, went to the community based on their suggestions and comments. We've had improvements upon what we've done. So it is the same idea we are carrying over to the Ahoto. So the involvement of the processors or the users is very, very key. Without it, they just abandon the technology, no matter how expensive it is or how beneficial it is for the users. Thank you.
Thank you. And you ended perfectly on time. Unfortunately, we have to close the session since we all have other things to tend to, but I would like to say a big thanks to the event organizers, so to Christiana and to Max for putting together a very interesting session, to all the speakers as well who shared their knowledge and their experiences with us, and also to the session audience, so everybody else who's listening in today, who provided a nice attentive space for us to discuss this topic of artisanal fisheries and management. We enjoyed listening to a range of research topics on artisanal fisheries in Ghana and Peru, and I hope you found the discussions to be as interesting as we have here at the University of Bergen. So to end the session, I just wanted to say that I hope this that the topics today and the discussions today also provides us with some reflection for the upcoming World Ocean Day on the 8th of June, as well as for the UN Ocean Conference to be held in Portugal at the last week of June. So with that, I thank you all again, and I wish you all a very pleasant day.
Thank you.